Welcome to Teaching Truth. It was just after 2 o'clock on a warm afternoon that 24 men fell in outside Hut 104, carrying bundles wrapped in towels, presumably to be dumped in the steam delousers. It would be too bad if the gate guards inspected them, because they contained uniform jackets and pants converted to look like civilian clothes, and little packets of concentrated food cakes made from oatmeal and breadcrumbs, milk, powder, chocolate and sugar. In the pockets were maps and a little German money. 2 unter-officers, holsters at their waists, formed them into 3 ranks, and they straggled off towards the gate, laughing and joking with the fake heartiness people show as they climb into the dentist's chair. The atmosphere was a little electric. Roger and the envious Floody felt it 100 yards away, where they sat in the corner of a hut, unobtrusively watching. The party stopped at the first gate, and one of the unter-officers showed his pass. The guard hardly even looked at it. And then the big barbed wire gates were swinging open. They marched to the next gate, and the guard looked casually at the pass, and in a few moments they were walking out into the road that curved into the pinewood. It was practically an anti-climax. An extract from the book made famous by the film, The Great Escape, one of the most famous true stories from the Second World War. A true story which depicts how more than 600 men in a German prisoner of war camp worked together to achieve an extraordinarily daring escape, digging those tunnels Tom, Dick and Harry made famous by the movie The Great Escape. Well, Peter certainly had a great escape from prison. And just as the soldiers in the Great Escape, those prisoners of war, as they walked towards those gates and the big barbed wire gates swung open, that was the same experience for Peter as he walked towards the iron gates that led to the city. The gates swung open. It was practically an anticlimax for this prisoner called Peter. In the passage that we read in our reflections yesterday, and that you can find in Acts chapter 12, Peter was sleeping. Peter, therefore, was showing no obvious signs of anxiety. He was sleeping soundly on what it appeared to be his last night before his execution. He wasn't tossing and turning. He wasn't pounding up and down his cell. He was sleeping. Psalm 127 verse 2, he gives his beloved sleep. He was bound with chains between 2 soldiers. The chains that guards the prison doors. The position that Peter was in, well, actually meant nothing to God and his appointed messengers, because God was able to break the chains. And Peter didn't know, certainly immediately, that what was done by the angel of God was real. He thought he was seeing a vision. He thought he was dreaming, in a sense. But he knew enough to know that God was doing something, and in a sense the explanation would come later. Now here's what I want to focus on today as we think about the providence of God. The providence of God toward Peter. The providence of God that came as a result of the church, as we thought about in our reflections yesterday, who were praying for Peter. Just like the prisoners of war in the Great Escape, as they came to the big barbed wire gate and it swung open for them, so that was true of this prisoner called Peter. He came to the iron gate and it opened of its own accord. It really was a case of open sesame. The soldiers, the chains, the guard posts, the iron gate, this seemingly unassailable iron gate, were all nothing to God, and when prayer was behind Peter. You know, if you're like me, and I'm sure you are, many of us worry about the iron gate that we have to encounter before we even get to it. We wonder how we're going to get out of a situation. We wonder how we're going to get round a situation. All we can see is there's a big iron gate in front of us. We worry when we go to the dentist. What if? What if we need to get a filling? What if we need to get a tooth out? We worry if we are going to go flying on an aeroplane. What if the plane crashes? What if there's a delay? What if? And in life we ask a lot of what if questions. But here's the interesting thing. When Peter came to the iron gate, it opened of its own accord. There was no gate there when Peter physically stepped towards it. It opened of its own accord. And that phrase uses the ancient Greek word automate. One could even say that the gates opened automatically for Peter. The gates opened automatically for Peter. The providence of God was clearly seen in Peter's experience. As he was released from those chains, as he left his prison cell, as he walked through the prison yard, those big iron gates swung open. And perhaps today you're in an experience that you're walking towards and all you can see is a huge iron gate in front of you, and you're wondering and worrying how on earth you're going to get through it. Have faith as Peter did, because the story and the account of Peter tells us that when there is prayer and when God is involved, when we get to those iron gates, more often than not, those iron gates swing open of their own accord. Those iron gates open automatically, and we are able to walk through those iron gates and leave the experience behind and leave what we were worrying about behind us. Perhaps today, those iron gates are opening for you.